Hello and welcome to the YesRef podcast with me, Olly Ballinger.
And me, Ben Williamson.
And more excitingly, this is the start of season 2. Ben, can you believe it, mate?
How many have we done? 11, 10,
12 maybe?
12? I've not paid too much attention to this. My bad. Yeah, it's been good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been really
The
interesting.
start of season 2.
I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's been different. Yeah, I've learned a lot.
Yeah, it's been interesting how the different roles have brought different experiences. And not just refereeing.
Sure, but all for the love of sport, right?
Yeah, all for the love of sport. Now, we've got something to ask you, listeners and our audience. Wondered if you could do us a small favour, and if you could hit that magic subscribe button and help us grow our channel. It will give us the opportunity to continue our journey in sharing sports officiating experiences from stakeholders across sport.
And soon we'll hit 1 million followers.
That we will, my friend. That we will. Now, enough about us. We are absolutely delighted to welcome our next guest, Elle Hopping. Now, Elle is an experienced sports administrator and has had the luxury of managing a number of different sports across a number of different institutions, particularly in the higher education space in universities. Elle, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Right?
Yeah, worth the drive.
Yeah, how long is it?
It was 2 hours, 10 minutes.
2 hours, 10 minutes to go.
Yes, I know. It was worth it.
We'll get you one of these colourful hoodies.
Yes, please. I want that colour.
I'm done. I'm going to stop now already.
Teal is the colour. So, Elle, why don't you tell our audience what it is that a sports administrator looks like in higher education?
Yeah, so it's very varied. I mean, as mentioned, I went to Loughborough University myself and then graduated during COVID, so that was a bit rubbish. But then my first full-time role was back in higher education, so that was at Regent's University in central London. And so my sort of administrator role there, which obviously involved lots of referee bookings, things like that, was different to then when I moved on to go to Surrey University, because it was a smaller institution. So that had its complications in itself, just being smaller, but obviously there were less sports to deal with. And then, moved on to Surrey University, and that was a lot of a bigger program. So that had its challenges with trying to make sure you find referees every week, trying to make sure, transport bookings are in place, pitch bookings are in place. So anyone listening who has done a box IA role will know the stress that comes with it, but it can be very rewarding when it obviously all pans out.
It's all got to work, right? I think someone else we spoke to recently said that your job is best when nobody knows that you're about, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, because if you're there, the problem is on a Bucks Wednesday, obviously when all the sport happens in higher education, I'm there like on the main desk at the front, so there's actually no hiding.
Right.
So if a referee doesn't turn up, even if you've done all your planning, you'll have a whole netball team coming at you at the front desk.
We're always there, aren't we? We always turn up when we say we're going to turn up.
So, Loughborough University, did you go to study sports and business admin, or did you do something completely different?
So funny enough, I started doing sports science with English. Because at school I quite liked writing and like creative stuff, but I've always loved sport. And my dad, being a classic dad, was like, don't just study sport, you won't get a job in it. And stuff like that. So I was like, okay, let me try some English. But I remember the first couple of lectures, they started talking about Shakespeare, and I was just like, this is so boring. Yeah, I was like, whoa, this is so boring. So I sort of ran to the head of sports science at Loughborough, and I was like, please, are there any spaces left on the straight sports science course? And luckily he was like, there are. Then I studied sport and exercise science with a placement year at Loughborough. So that was 3 years with a placement year, so 4 years.
Choose Loughborough because of the sporting background at Loughborough.
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny you say that. To be honest with you, I had no clue if I wanted to go to university or not. And I'm sure lots of people can relate. When you're at school, you're kind of just like, I have no idea what I want to do. But I knew I wanted to move out, meet new people. So I went to visit a few universities. Always knew I liked sport, but that wasn't like set on it. I wanted to be a presenter. So I was kind of like, oh, do I do media studies or something like that? But I went to Loughborough, and honestly, the thing which drew me in was I really like the trees on the campus. Yeah, I love the countryside.
You know what I mean?
Hang on, did she say she liked the trees?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Honestly, I remember just walking around the campus and being like, this is so pretty. There's like trees, there's like fields. And because of it's obviously Leicestershire. There's just lots of space, and coming from London, I was just like, yeah. And obviously the sports facilities are amazing. Knew I loved sport, but the grades requirements were really high. But luckily, I got an A-star in photography, and that allowed me to get onto the course. So yeah, that was me at uni.
Did you ever consider uni?
No, I did an apprenticeship in cabinet making.
You did, yeah.
So I'm quite handy with my hands when it comes to wood and making a bit of furniture. I didn't.
Hang on, you put a shelf up for me once, the nail's still hanging out. It's probably a screw, it's not even a nail, is it? It's a screw.
Maybe I used it as part of my apprenticeship. Maybe.
Right, that's fine.
Getting back to the sport, right? So what I'm interested in is what your perspective looks like on managing all the different sports, because like from our point of view, every sport is different, but every sport has a consistent theme across it. Like where does that sit with you, and from an IA perspective?
I'd say, like different sports also have different cultures and things that work. So rugby is very set in, and I guess it's a health and safety thing. You have to go through, I think it's called Who's the Ref?
Yes.
Yeah, you've heard of it. So they were very set on like, you must book referees through this sort of thing. Even though I had like a contact list, you had to go through that. So that had its challenges, because I obviously was using YesRef, and we were utilizing that to pay all the referees, find referees. And the rugby were like, no, you must do it this way. So that sort of had its challenges there. The other sports actually have been pretty on board with YesRef, which was really nice for me, because obviously we just pay them all through the platform, and that's bish bash bosh done. But yeah, it was a struggle initially. I think when I first met Ben, or spoke to Ben when I was working at Regents, people didn't know the name. But I think now that your company's obviously grown, more people have heard of it, that it's not just a dodgy scam. Whereas like, I think initially I had a few netball umpires actually, and I'd booked them in, and they'd done their umpiring, and they were like, oh, how do I get paid? And I was like, oh, you just need to set up this account on YesRef. And they were like, what's that? And I was like, it's just literally, it's like a bank transfer. I will put the money straight into a bank account. And she was like, no, you're trying to scam me. And I was like, I literally...
No, just want to give you some money, if that's okay.
I think, there were challenges initially, but once people sort of realised it's very easy to use, then it started to work. Basketball were great. I had great feedback from basketball umpires. They were very chilled, laid back, because we had issues at Surrey particularly, where the payment structure was very slow, very laboured, and we were constantly losing referees because they weren't getting paid on time. So initially had its challenges, but the longer I worked in it, the better it became across all sports.
It's really interesting. Like, so naturally we're a bit biased on YesRef, but what I'm interested to understand is like, what are your problems, or what were your problems pre-YesRef? Because like, this is one of the things I think I think people don't realise, like those challenges. Okay, we've got a bit of technology that can help us today. But like, what were those problems?
The biggest problems were probably reliability on referees.
What is that actually turning up?
Yeah, actually turning up and committing was difficult. What from my end?
For me, though, like trying to get hold of the referee, confirming it, getting bank details. Are you definitely coming? Oh, you need to speak to this. He's the captain, or she's the captain when you get here.
Communications were always difficult, and obviously there's a lot of people involved within the communication streams from both ends. So sometimes at Regents, particularly booking a football referee, I had to go through a company, and they then had to contact the referees, wait for the referees, and it was just too many people involved. I'm just someone that's like, pick up the phone, look, can you do this date? Great, see you then. I'm holding you to it. So that was a difficulty. And then another thing was standard sometimes of referees. Sometimes, because I've got a million sports to look after, I don't know every referee that's coming. And so I'd have complaints in both the institutions I've worked at with regards to standard of referees. But for me, the most important thing as like a administrator is that they're reliable, they turn up on time. That's maybe bad to admit, but I didn't care as much if they weren't as good of a referee, as long as they turned up on time. So we'd have, I used to have the football team at Surrey come up to me and be like, oh my God, you've got so-and-so again. He's so biased. And I'd just be like, I don't care. He turns up. Sorry, sod off. So yeah, they were probably my biggest challenges, I'd say.
And I think You touch on a really important point there. I think sport needs those reliable referees to turn up week in, week out. And I think we need to put a referee, an umpire, a sports official on a game first. And I think we need to solve that problem before we worry about standards in some respects, because there's an element of, we're talking about grassroots sports here.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Bucks Prem, which might require a different level of sports official, but let's encourage those referees to want to turn up. And if you give them that successful experience of, there was a friendly person at the desk to greet me, I got directed to my changing room, and I got paid in a swift time frame. Like, I think that will help encourage people.
Yeah, and they're going to want to work harder as well. Naturally, I think if you're a lazy institution that's not paying people on time, an organisation that's just not good, the ref's going to turn up and be annoyed. Whereas if they're, turning up and they know they're going to be paid on time, they're being treated well, they're going to bring their best game as well. So I think
that's really important to remember for referees as well. Like, it's a challenge, whoever it is, whether you're the referee and you've got your own commitments to get to the game, you're the sports institution that's trying to book to a referee. It's such a challenge, and we probably don't enough understand each other's roles to go, yeah, fine, I said I'd be there. Letting them down on the morning of the game is actually really rubbish. And for a referee, it's really easy to go, well, I just can't make it, not my problem. But actually, the knock-on effect for that, and especially in university sports, because there's certain rules that if you don't have a qualified referee at a certain time, you've got to let the other team know there might be a walkover. And that actually, the knock-on effect for that is horrendous. So referees, if you're listening and you're doing university sport, turn up. Or if you can't, let them know really early, would be really helpful. And that's a little thing that we could probably do better as referees or sports officials across every sport. Just communicate better. It shouldn't be that difficult. As soon as you know you can't do it, or don't take the game if you don't think you can do it. And maybe take it last minute if it's still available, because that'll be better than dropping out, right? Is that fair? Great. That's one of Ben's top tips for season 2.
And ultimately, there will be exceptions to the rule, right? It's just we want to eliminate those as best we can. But the other thing I think that's really interesting is there's probably a lack of understanding around the opportunities available to officiate university sport. So I think if you talk about your experience, you've probably not been around universities.
No,
and
I didn't know it existed.
No, and it's like, maybe that's the geographical situation, but I still think there's more that can be done to promote that there are so many opportunities.
Oh my God, you could. So I have one guy for our football ref, and he is very reliable, comes every week. We were paying it. Am I allowed to say how much we were paying? I don't know. So we were paying £40 a game at Surrey. It was more Regents because it was central London, but he would do sometimes 2-3 games for us a week. That's a good bit of income. Like, do you know what I mean? And university sport needs to happen. It's it's almost like a promise that universities have to make to students is to offer sport. And I think more people need to know that what a Bucks Wednesday is, because it happens every week, and universities literally have budgets to pay people.
A question on that then: if we agreed universities have to offer the sport, great, I think that's a really good idea. Why is it all played on Wednesday at 2:00 when the vast number of referees don't referee Wednesdays at 2:00? Because the two don't really make too much sense.
I know.
And then if we were going to do it and go, we are going to do it, do you think £40 is enough to entice a referee to have the afternoon off work, or try and do something different to come and officiate?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think so. The reason that university sport is a Wednesday afternoon, it sort of links as well with the private school sector. Everyone does games and fixtures on a Wednesday afternoon. I think it's just essentially where every institution knows that do not put lectures on a Wednesday afternoon.
It's just clean and simple. It's Wednesday.
Yeah, and it works for the students because they can plan their week around that as well. So obviously it's more important to make sure there's an actual team ready to play, and then you've just got to hope that John, who's retired, isn't working on a Wednesday afternoon. But that brings up an important topic in the sense that, well, actually, you could have amazing referees that would love to do university sport, but if
can't do Wednesdays.
So that's maybe where you've got to be flexible in understanding, and that's where it was difficult in my role, because I tried to be, as much as it was very frustrating, I took the brunt of all the complaints if a referee wasn't there. It was kind of like I then didn't ever want to shout at the referee, because I'm like, look, I understand, like, you're not going to stop your full-time job or like get told off by your manager to creep off to a, sort of thing like that. Yeah. So yeah, I think sport will always be on a Wednesday afternoon. That's going to be the issue with that.
What would you say was your biggest challenge?
Oh, in my Bucks IA role.
Yeah.
Biggest challenge. Do you know what? Biggest challenge is that I couldn't please everyone, and I'm quite a people pleaser by nature, and I quite like to make sure that everyone's happy and do a good job.
Yeah.
But you just couldn't, and I think that's what ultimately brought me to my decision to not go back into it again, and hence why I'm not working there now. I just didn't want to. Yeah, I just found it really hard to sort of, one referee couldn't turn up because their child was ill or something. I'm like, oh, fair enough. Like, that's really annoying, but fair enough. And then the team comes to me, they're like, oh my God, Ellie, we can't play our game. And then I'm like, I'm so sorry, I understand. And so that was probably my biggest challenge was, being able to just not please everyone.
And pitch bookings similarly, or was it just referees?
Oh yeah. Sorry. I mean, that was a whole nightmare in itself, because again, you cannot please everyone. You'd have the budget holders shouting at us because we've spent XYZ on a coach to take a team down to Portsmouth, but then you're like, the students are shouting at me because they haven't got the money to pay for petrol to get that. And then it's just such a nightmare role. And I think if anyone's listening to this and does the Bucks IA role, I want them to know that they're not alone in feeling like you just can't please everyone, and it's a really hard role, and it's underpaid for what you have to go through, like university wide. I'm quite open about my finances, and I would openly talk about what I earn, and then the other people would, after they heard me say what I earn, they were like, oh, I'm also only on like low 20s K, sort of mid 20s, like, can you believe it? And it's like, yeah, this is what sort of it's about. So if I can try and change that as well, that it's paid, that role is paid a bit more, then that would be a good legacy that I would leave.
I think the role is respected by the university.
No, not at all. I mean, look, I'm saying this, like, my old manager might listen to this and be like, I did respect you. But like, I think it's just a culture thing, that it's like generally young graduates do the role. So they'll come out of uni, don't have much experience, don't really know what the role entails. And so it's a young person doing it. And I think just in businesses in general, young people are taking a little bit advantage of, aren't they? So I just think, I don't think it's well respected by.
So how can that be changed? So to the manager of the IA that's listening, what advice, because you're not in the role at the moment, I think it's fair, what advice would you give to go like, we need to love this role a little bit more, we need to look after it?
I would say, obviously, relationship with manager, like, I think if your manager has done the role themselves, I think that's good, and you know that they're going to have your back because they fully appreciate how it feels. Both my managers, my previous roles, hadn't actually done the Bucks IA job. Like, they knew about it, but they hadn't actually done it. So I think they didn't have that like core understanding of really how stressful it can be. And then just, if something goes wrong, maybe just support them and always have the IA's back and be like, unless they've obviously, the IA's done something completely wrong, fair enough. But like, if they've tried their best, then just be understanding, and maybe take the brunt of the complaints a bit more, because the IA is getting paid X amount less than the management. Well, actually, if the complaints are coming in, maybe the management need to take the brunt of that.
Yeah.
And do you think there's anything that can be done to improve the role, if you talk about its operational delivery, whether that be through technology or whether that be through process?
Yeah, I mean, obviously your company, one example, that's helped me massively in the roles that I've had with regards to finances. Bucks Play in itself, I mean, this is like a conversation with Bucks. They're aware. Lots of things have been said to Bucks about and Bucks Play has got better with time. When I was at university, it was rubbish, but it has got a bit better. But maybe the systems on there a bit more efficient. Like, for example, cup. So you've got obviously like weekly leagues, and then you've got cup weeks. From my understanding, at the minute, is the cup weeks weren't on Bucks Play on the fixture lists initially. So you're planning your fixtures for the year. We'd have all our fixtures, and I'd be there like plugging it away. But then the cups weren't initially on it. Then it would throw me off because I hadn't booked a cup week, because a cup week had randomly come in. So stuff like that, I think, could really help.
No, it's really interesting. And I think we've probably had quite a contrast from regions to Surrey, because the size of the...
What was the size of So how many teams were you looking after at Regents? Then how does that compare to?
So I was looking after. So at Regents, I was like in charge of all the sports, so the social sport, participation sport, and competitive sport. But we only had 5 competitive sport teams, whereas at Surrey we had like 46. Wow. So yeah, but that's 46 clubs. So they're within the clubs you've got like 3 or 4 teams. So that can't do the maths on top of my head, but that's like considerable amount more. There were, yeah.
And you got a couple of big clubs, right?
Yeah.
Like netball.
Yeah. Netball do really well. Basketball, football. We had football. I think we had 5 men's teams, 2 women's teams. Obviously, the staff were bigger. I had a team at Surrey, whereas I only had just myself at Regents. But yeah, the workload was considerably more, and the pay wasn't, which is why it's kind of like interesting to talk about, because it's like, the bucks at IA role, depending on what institution you're at, might be respected differently. Budgets are budgets within university sport. I'm not blaming the management necessarily, because they're only given a certain budget, but university sport in general isn't well paid. So that's something, if any listeners are thinking about getting into it, you're not going to be a millionaire.
Yeah. No, but I think what it does do is give you a real insight into how sport is organised, and I think that is something that is transferable. Whether you come out of education and you go and do that, even if you was to take a role on a committee of organising a local competition, or whether you go into business, doing something in sport, whether that be five-a-side or whether that be netball, it is a really transferable skill.
Oh yeah, like I've learnt loads of skills and I don't regret it at all. I think I'm a lot more resilient and knowledgeable because of it, and hopefully whatever my next job is, I'll look back and go like, oh, that stress was worth it.
Sure. But it's the adrenaline every week. Like I used to have to organise a games programme on a Wednesday for the Football League Trust futsal programme, going back to like 2015, 16. And like it was relentless. Like you'd get to a Wednesday game day, we'd have a national programme, we'd have North, Midlands, Southwest, and then London. And referees were good in some locations, not so good in others. And it was like get to match day and everything would be sorted. You could relax, and you just have the problems of now and again a referee may or may not show, traffic, and then also you have the challenges around the incidents that would happen. So yellow and red cards, and because you're in an education environment, like everything's a little bit more heightened. From a safeguarding and a DPS perspective. So like every I and T needs to be crossed. And then you get to Thursday and you get this big like, relax. And then it's like, right, Friday, I'm going to get everything sorted before I can relax for the weekend then, switch off, have a moment. And you walk back into Monday morning, it's like the adrenaline's kicked in again. And there's a part of me that I love the adrenaline. Like it fired you up. It's like, oh my goodness, there's so much to be cracking on with. But you can end up being a busy fool. Like you can end up putting on the same game 5 times. Because one comes off, one comes on, and like that whole challenge was infuriating.
And I don't know if you felt the same, but like I like to pride myself on doing like a good job of it, but because there's so many things to think about, you're human, mistakes would happen, and I would really beat myself up about it because I'm bugger, I booked the same ref for the same time or something. So that was a challenge, but I've learned a lot from it.
What would you say makes a really successful IA?
Successful. Do you know what? Probably just someone who deals well to pressure. I think obviously there's the fundamental skills of like organisation, punctuality, but I just think someone who can go, do you know what? I'm not gonna. That's something I've learned, is that I like to say I was quite organised. My communication was good, and I think the referees were happy. But for me myself, to maybe longevity in that role is actually be like, do you know what? Done all I can. It's okay. Like you just got to relax now.
Question, I'll put you on the spot. What was more important to you in the role? Keeping the referee happy, if you could only choose one, keep the referees happy, or keep the clubs or teams happy? What was more important to you in your role?
The clubs and the teams. Yeah. Because I had to deal with the students on a daily basis. They knew where my office was. Like they would come in and like the referees, I could ultimately just sweet talk them, be like, oh, sorry, Steve, like, didn't work out this week. Bye.
Ultimately, we're there to service the game, right, as referees and as
Yeah.
umpires. You know, because no club, no game. You're not going to see a referee or an umpire on a court with no players.
Yeah, but
This is fascinating. Do you remember when Alan Dale from Suffolk said this to us once? So talking around no referees, no game. We were talking to he was referee. He was in charge of referees up in Suffolk Cafe, and he was saying you would talk about the saying of no referees, no game. And to some extent, I agree. But then he was going on to say that you see players playing on grass pitches, football pitches, whatever, without referees. You don't see referees running around an empty pitch, blowing a whistle and pretending that he's refereeing a game. So it's really interesting that the game will always carry on. There will always be a game.
Yeah, always.
Yeah, but that's probably where I got stressed out, is because I was trying to please you guys and the clubs, and actually you kind of can't. Like, in an ideal world you can, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, it's been really interesting digging deeper into the role. I'd like to switch the conversation slightly into probably something just as topical and controversial as what's currently booming, I think, across the globe, and that's women in sport. So, what is your current outlook on what that looks like, and what's your involvement in that bit?
Yeah, so I'm very passionate. I mean, sometimes I feel like when people go, I'm a feminist, they're like, oh, feminist, da, da, da. But it's like, for me, it's just like anyone. I just want anyone to get involved in sport. I'm very passionate about sport. Like, talking away from my professional life, like, I'm just very sporty. I love sport. I've always been involved in it. And obviously I'm a girl, so that's my, personal interest there. But women in sport in general, it's got so much better. Like, I'm 26, like, I'm not like an old biddy, but even in my years, I've seen it really progress. And like the things that they introduce little girls in school to today, I didn't get introduced to that. And I'm like, it's really nice to see. And yeah, my next career path might be like teaching or something like that, or personal training. So I have more involvement in that side of things. But yeah, I think it's evolving, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like, and obviously, like when you get the success stories that you get in football with the Lionesses, and then you also get like the Netball Super League, like in the way that coverage is being promoted on Sky, like it's really inviting.
Yeah.
And then you talk about the equal pay conversation, which is
Was
topical.
that is it the Australian Matildas? I've
Yeah.
probably offended lots of people if that's wrong, but I think I've read the Matildas. They're getting equal pay to the men's.
Yeah, they've been on quite a quest and a campaign to get that right, and they've put that in a position now where I think they're on equal pay with the men.
Oh, nice.
So it's really encouraging to see. I mean, ultimately, that should be the case anyway.
Yeah,
well, that's one's opinion, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's viewership, isn't it? It comes back down to the question, people who don't agree with equal pay in women's sports would be like, well, it's, if people aren't viewing it, then they can't pay it. But that's where it needs to be. Well, we need to talk about it. We need to have these conversations so that more people don't see it as like women and men's sport. It's just high level sport. That's an amazing level of play there. Let's just watch it regardless of what gender you are. So yeah.
Yeah. So like, I agree. Gender shouldn't be part of the conversation insofar as like you shouldn't view anything differently.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding that, it is interesting to see how everybody deals with it, and also the cultures that are involved.
Yeah.
Because like in England alone, the cultures across those different sports varies.
Oh yeah.
Like tremendously.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to see. Like, what do you play a particular sport?
Yeah, so I've always swam throughout my life. That's been my main sport. But I have just loved every sport, and I've been quite lucky. Like, my parents were quite sporty, so they were always like very encouraging. So primary school, I would do like all the sports. I did cricket, tennis, football, running, all things like that. And then as I went into secondary school, I just sort of stuck with swimming, and then took up athletics. So I did like javelin and shot put, things like that. And then when I went to Loughborough, I was like, oh my God, like all these facilities, what do I do? But it's very interesting because when you're at that age, and you've sort of done a few sports, if you actually want to get good at something, you do really need to specialize. But I just never did. And looking back, maybe I'm like, I wish I maybe had, because I think I would have loved to have been a professional athlete in something, rather than working in sport. I would have loved to have maybe been an athlete. But I just wanted to try everything. So my first year at uni, I did ultimate frisbee.
That is a quality sport, by the way. I used to teach that. Yeah. When I worked at PGL, Kids Activity Centre. Yeah, we used to do ultimate frisbee all the time. I absolutely loved it. One of the best things I've ever played.
It is, and everyone would like take the mick out of you, but I'm like, try playing it. It's really hard. So I did that, and then in my second year, I did water polo, sort of mixed my swimming and javelin, I guess, and just did that. Really tough sport. Oh my god! Like, have you guys ever played water polo?
No, I've played it, but like casually whilst you've been away on holiday. Like, nothing competitive. Like,
you'd probably drown. It's really tough. So
Not for me.
no.
But it's another dimension.
But bringing it back to the topic of, women in sport, I think I maybe am different in the sense that I was exposed to a lot of sport. I had supportive parents. There was never a discussion of, you're a girl, don't try that. But don't get me wrong, there would be few comments throughout my time. I remember, if my PE teachers are watching this, they're going to be like, of course you brought this up. But I'm the first girl that's ever played in my school end of year sixth form versus teachers football match.
Wow.
Or I was the only girl. There might have been girls who've done it since I did it. I hope so, because I wanted to inspire some people. But it was always men. It was always men that played as the sixth formers and always teachers. And so I got into sixth form, and then they started to talk about the match. It was quite a big thing at our school. And I was just like to my teachers, I'm going to try it out. And he's a really nice guy. I'm not going to say his name, but one PE teacher said to me, he was like, no. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it's for men. And I was like, why? And then no one had ever questioned him. And he was just sort of like, oh, because, you could get hurt and stuff. I'm 5'11". Like, I'm taller than most of the boys and bigger and worked out more than most of the guys on the team. And I'd played football before. My whole point was, look, if I'm rubbish at football, fair enough. Like, equal rights. If someone's better than me, fair enough. But there were boys who were trialing out, and I knew I was better at football than them. So I pushed on through, and I wasn't selected for the team. And I was like, look, fair enough if people are better than me. But then I saw the team selections, and I was like, I'm better than him. I'm better than him. I'm better than him. And so I really pushed for it. And then some other PE teachers, other members of staff, it became a bit of a thing. We're like, Ellie needs to play in this match. Like, this is ridiculous. And then I wasn't given a kit. So initially I wasn't given any kit bought for me. And then on match day, I turned up in my own football kit. I didn't care. I turned up, and a few really supportive guys on the team were like, no, Ellie, you need to play. And bless him, George Knights, if you're listening, he subbed me off, and he was like, no, Ellie, come on and play. And I was like, thanks, George. And then I played. So yeah, it was really good. But there was, deflection as to people weren't happy with it, like, because I was a girl. And that is, even that was only, I left school like 8 years ago or so. So I'm like, that's not even that long ago, and there was still that much. Do you know what I mean? But I think it has got better even since then.
It's insane, isn't it?
It is, but what's also really exciting is the sports officiating pathway for females is also growing and booming at a similar level.
That's really
and it's exciting because, like, the more and more people that we see introducing the opportunity for male and female to go and officiate is fantastic. Like, they're gonna FIFA Futsal World Cup. There will be the first one for females in 2025. Like, it will be the first FIFA Futsal World Cup for women, and it will be all female officials on officiating that tournament. Like, and that's just like fantastic. The interesting question is, should it be solely exclusive to females, or should the opportunity be given to both?
So this is an interesting topic, and I think it goes beyond sport, doesn't it? Because even some degrees are now offered to women free of charge in engineering, and not men, because they want more women in there. But then it's like, actually, is that a bit unfair? And that isn't equal. And so back to your question, no, I think men should be allowed in there as well. I don't think it should just be exclusive for women, because then it's almost like, oh, poor women, like, let's give them their own little bit, because, do you know what I mean? So, but that's maybe coming from me, because I'm quite confident, and I'm confident enough to go, I don't care if you're a bloke, I'm going to go and do it. But then it's like, you might ask someone else who's maybe not as confident, and they'll go, actually, no, if you give me that space where it is just females, that's where I can thrive. So I think it's opinionated, but
it's a challenge nowadays just with how society is, right? Because everybody wants to try and please everyone. So we do women's referee courses. That's really great. But actually, if then they're free because we want more women to referee, brilliant. But actually, we then the young males that can't afford to do a referee's course, we don't put on a free referee's course for little Jimmy who's from an underprivileged background, or his parents just don't have 150 quid for a referee's course. So great, we get more women, but little Jimmy, who's going to be just as good as the women referees, female referees, doesn't get the opportunity. So I think I personally really struggle with it because, well, let's just make it 50 quid for everyone, or let's make it 70 quid for everyone. Doesn't matter if you're black, white, woman, male, it doesn't matter. This is how much it is, and we'll get everyone involved. And if we've got bursaries, or we haven't. I think it's really difficult.
And I think the thing that is important is exposure. So you do need to see more women doing things like this because that will then spark an inspiration. Again, as mentioned, because I was always interested in the sport and always around it, I didn't need that extra inspiration because I just sort of just enjoyed it. Whereas someone who could be amazing but isn't seeing it, then maybe that's where it would be good to see that just women on their own, because you think, oh, you can do that. So
I think you're right. A lot of people do thrive in their own environment. So you look at kind of women's gym classes, lots more women feel comfortable to go and do that because they don't think they're going to be judged. They don't think whatever their stumbling blocks were going to the gym before. It's a women's only class for an hour. I'm going to be with my own peer group. I'm going to go. Great, now they need to go. So it's really difficult to try and get that judgment and that balance right. But you also might have a young male that's not confident to go to the gym with all the big worded blokes lifting however much they're lifting. And actually, a women's only class might be really good for him because he feels more comfortable in that group. But he probably couldn't go. So then he now don't get to go to the gym. It's so tough. It's so tough.
I think, it's worth probably having a nice conversation about, maybe our audience wants to drop in with some comments. The question for you, Ellie, I think, and you may have touched on it slightly, is do you think women's sport has moved forward in the last, let's say, 10 years? And what else can be done on top of, the campaigns that are going on?
What's happened? Yeah, so definitely, I think, obviously I'm in the profession, I'm in the field, so I have seen it. But with regards to what can be done better to someone who's maybe not exposed to that, I think, things like what you're doing, speaking about it more, having these like honest conversations. There's loads of campaigns like This Girl Can and things like that were launched. They're really great for just getting active level. But I think actually, how can you engage more people? Money's a lot to do with it. I think if you can pay people like you two to go into schools and actually speak to young women and say that this is what's available. I didn't have that in my school, but I know that when I worked at Lancing College, which is a private school. They had the money to pay for guests to come in, and that's a whole different debate in itself, the private school and state school sector, because X amount of Olympians, a lot of them come from a private school sector, but it's only like 7% of the actual UK's population go to private schools. So that's very interesting. And it shows that money is a lot to do with it as well. But yeah, without money being the main, barrier there, I think it's just exposing young people to sport and what there is to offer. I was in the park yesterday just working out on, those outside.
People actually use that?
Yeah, because I'm tight and I didn't want to pay for a gym membership. So.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen anyone use them.
Well,
That's incredible.
I know. And
We've got one in Melbourne. I've never seen anyone on it.
Oh, get busy.
No.
Get busy because I'm a little girl. And
there you go.
Because I was doing some pull-ups. Yeah, I was doing some pull-ups and she came over, she was like, Mum, I want to try a pull-up. And she couldn't do it, bless her. But she tried. She saw it and she wanted to try it, and that made my day.
That is great. Yeah. Lovely story.
and a shout out to whoever's created that equipment outside, right? Yes. Because
Barnet Council, I think.
We are going to do something new and different for season 2 of this podcast. So audience, subscribers, listeners, let us know what you think. We're going to go for a quick fire round. Ellie going to pose you some questions. We've got a small handful that we're going to send in your direction. They don't have to be as directives, yes or no. So if you want to add a little bit of flavour to them in terms of elongate it a little bit, that'd be great. And for those of you listening, let us know what you think. Ben, have you got the first one chalked up and ready to go?
I have. I've got it written down because I can't actually remember that conversation flow. So I have to write it down too. So, Ellie, what's your favourite sport to play or watch, and why?
Oh my God, dodgeball to play because I've got right throw on me and I absolutely just look at people and they can't say anything because it's like the aim of the game.
Does it feel like you're letting something like anger, yeah?
Letting some frustration out.
Yes. And then what was the second part?
To watch.
To watch? Good question. Probably rugby at the minute.
Okay.
Been enjoying that. I've just started playing, Guildford Rugby Club. Thought I'd be good. Like I'm good at catching and throwing and like running, but I'm really scared of bumping into people. So I don't know if I'm going to be that good.
I mean, that could be a challenge.
Yeah, I actually cried last week at training because someone stood on my ankle with their stud, which really did hurt. But
I mean, the rugby studs are notoriously bigger.
Yeah. So, but watching it's fun.
Got a second sport again where we don't work out.
Yeah, maybe just stick to swimming.
Right.
Have you ever considered being a sports official? And if so, what sport?
And if not, why not? We can elongate that too.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I haven't, honestly, because I've always enjoyed playing it. That's probably just because of personal, I'm very competitive. So if I'm umpiring it or refereeing it, I'm like, oh, boring, get me in there. So, but I have done a bit of netball umpiring. Didn't really like it that much, if I'm honest. So if I had to choose one, probably football.
What did you not like about it?
Netball in itself, so many rules. I always, whenever I play, I always foul. I always run with the ball. I always do something wrong. So as an umpire, I'm like, I'm the worst umpire because I don't follow the rules myself.
Don't run, but I can
Play.
Don't bounce the ball, but I can.
No, I'd rather play than be an official.
Fair enough. Do you support a team?
Not really.
No,
I just like all sports, so I've never been at one. I will just say England.
Great. Well, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's a boring answer.
No, because I think what's really exciting about that is you will probably go and watch the big events. Like you'll probably go to an American football event. You'll probably go to something at Wembley Stadium.
Just because it's sport as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
That consumer mindset is changing.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting because you can actually make sport a show. Yeah. Now, you speak to people in that sport and they go, there's a fine balance between it being for the sport and it being a show. Yeah. Like take Formula One in Vegas, for example. There was a big debacle about whether that was it for the show of Vegas, Showtime baby, or was it for the sport, you know? Yeah. And those in the sport have got a different opinion to those outside of the sport, but everybody wants everyone to watch to grow the sport, right?
Yeah.
Big debate. That's a whole other podcast, boys.
Was there a sport where they tried to do like the NFL type halftime routine? Did we try that in football? Well, I remember seeing something on telly.
Did you actually? Was it rugby? Was it? I was at the rugby sevens and they tried to do that.
There's like a little halftime show.
Yeah. I mean, it was fun, but it wasn't like the NFL. They just couldn't. I mean, America's a lot bigger and they have a lot of money and more money in sport, don't they? So.
But yeah, I'm not sure I'd like that. Who knows? Okay, next question. Do you have a sporting hero or like a sporting icon that you really look up to?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this in the car. I actually don't have anyone in mind, and I don't know if
Williamson is a national group assistant referee. Maybe he could be the one.
Goodness sake.
Jumpers. But yeah, no, I honestly, again, back to the original thing, because I just love all sport. I've never really had one sporting idol, but if I could probably pick someone, just because I had to do a research project on them at school, Hannah Cockcroft, she's a Paralympic water athlete and she's a sprinter, and just reading her story was amazing. I find Paralympians really inspiring because, you know, they obviously have different odds to go against, and they've still, you know, made it into their sport. But yeah, Hannah Cockcroft, if she's listening, then
we're going to get this to Hannah Cockcroft. If she is going to hear this, we're going to do that.
What's the thing you love about sport the most?
Oh, trying to get it to 1 point. The one thing I like, would you say? Probably just that release from your day-to-day stresses. Like I try and exercise most days just because it's like, you know, everyone's got life stresses, and I think it gives you that hour, 2 hours to just not think about that. And that's probably why I've been so consistent with sport is because it's just for my mental health. It's kept me like sane throughout the years. If I've ever, I struggled at uni initially, just like moving away from home, and it was all a lot. But I just always knew I have sport to fall back on if I ever have a really stressful moment in time. It's like that's probably why I enjoy it the most, just to keep me sane.
Yeah, love it. Final question for you then. What is your biggest sporting achievement, if you have one?
Oh my God. Do you know what? I got through to the fitness stage for The Gladiator. You know, the BBC, The Gladiators? Yeah. They filmed it a couple of months ago. I didn't make it onto the show. I was gutted, but I'm going to try again next year. But out of 10 and a half applicants, I got through, I think, 1,000, 10 and a half, half an applicant. I think only like 120 people out of that got selected for the fitness trial stage.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we had to go to Lee Valley Athletic Centre and just a day of fitness testing. It was like the most amazing thing I've ever done. So cool. It was so cool. But yeah, maybe next year I'll try again and I'll get on the show.
That's epic.
Yeah.
You know, they bring the show back. I used to love that. There's that referee when his little sprinkle. You'll go on my first whistle in his Scottish accent. I remember that. Yeah.
I think it's coming out in January. I think the show's going to be on your TVs.
We always do a competition around. Can you remember the Gladiators? Wolf. Yeah. Wolf was one.
God, I'm too young. I wasn't around.
Was it John Anderson? No.
The referee? No, I think you could be bob on there.
Yeah,
I think it is.
I don't know where I've plugged that from, but he's popped into the end.
If it's not now, I'm going to bring that up on the next episode. It's going to look really stupid.
Yeah, for sure.
You will go on my first whistle.
That's quite right. Yeah.
That's a really bad accent. I'm really sorry.
Ellie, thanks for doing the quickfire question round with us. Hopefully it was interesting. I hope our audience liked it. Something a little bit different.
We're going to be doing that with everyone, aren't we?
We are. Yeah, we might change the questions.
I hope we do change the questions.
For sure. But more importantly, it's been really interesting understanding more about like what your role has entailed, what your outlook and your perspective on sports administration is, and also chatting about women in sport, because it is booming and there are still lots of controversial things going on, but I think everything is going in the right direction.
Yeah. Definitely is.
And I think the more that we can talk about it, I think there are various things that will improve, like just doing stuff, like you going into the park and doing some pull-ups. Yeah. You inspire someone to just want to get involved. Yeah. And I think that's the crux of everything. If you can see it, you give people that belief that you want to do it.
Yeah, it's not just me that can do it, like anyone can do it. So, yeah.
You got any final words or anything you want to plug to the camera for our audience?
Final words to the camera. I'd just say probably two things. If you're someone thinking about working in sport, go for it. It can be really fun. The teammates that you work with, the people you'll meet will be, hopefully like-minded. And then with regards to if you're just someone, not even just a young girl, just a young guy wanting to get involved in sport, just go on Google, check out local initiatives in your area and just give something a go and try your best to take away that embarrassed feeling where you probably will have, but do you know what, it's totally worth it if you get over that little bit of like, oh, this is cringe. When I signed up to Gladiators, people were like, Ellie, this is so cringe, but I'm so glad I did it. It was the most amazing experience. So yeah, if you're watching and you want to try anything, just go for it. Don't care what people say, just do it.
Love that. Ellie, thank you very much for driving a couple of hours to come and see us. Thanks for your energy and drive in the podcast. We've really appreciated it, and just understanding a little bit more about your background. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all, and don't forget to subscribe.